from the All Indiana Podcast Network. It's Diversity Focus Today. Now, here's your host, Ricky Solid Gold Clark.
Hello, welcome to Diversity Focus Today with Ricky Clark. I'm Dr. Tammy Harris, better known as Dr. T. Ricky Clark and Mike Murray will not be here today. They're out of town, but we do have two special guests with me. I have Dr. Debrah Miller, who is an MD, board certified family medicine and obesity medicine. And then our special guest, Terra Cooks, who is multi-genre artist and spoken word publisher, screenwriter, radio production person. Tell me more. Film producer.
Yes. I am a filmmaker, producer, director, and only because I did it all myself. So
you did it on yourself.
That kind of put me in that spotlight.
Just like Madam C.J. Walker, self-made. So welcome, ladies, to be here.
Thank you.
I got some female energy in here. Not to say anything about you, Alan. I know the producer here, but it's okay. He's a good one. He's on our side. But today, I just wanted to talk about COVID. It's been kind of out of the news, but just recently in the news. By the time this had aired, it'd be 2 weeks in. But I just read a headline that says U.S. will no longer recommend COVID shots for children and pregnant women. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced that the vaccine would not be included as a part of the immunization schedule for healthy children. The vaccine has been recommended since it had become available. Unfortunate. And then I had also just recently read some recent statistics that it's an uptick in deaths, over like 300 cases related to COVID deaths.
And I'm pretty sure people thought that it was dwindling down or it come to a halt maybe, but no, that's not the case. And if you go into certain places like the pharmacies and things like that, you'll notice that people are starting to mask up again.
Mm-hmm. And coming into this summer celebration and being around big crowds, I think this would be a perfect time to discuss that. And you had previously, at the height of COVID, created a film. You want to tell us a little bit about that before we play it?
Sure. Well, again, like you said, my name is Terra Cooks. I go by the artist name of Poetry in Motion. And yes, I am a multi-genre artist, filmmaker, recording artist, radio personality, author. So it's probably better to tell people what I don't do than to tell them what I do. But as you said, the film is titled Tears of a Nation, The COVID Effect. And originally people thought that what it's about you encouraging people to take the vaccine. No, it's not. It's about the aspect of COVID that a lot of people weren't talking about, and that's the isolation and the depression that certain groups experience because of COVID. And during the time that I was doing my working on my film, and it was actually my first film, I had the opportunity, thanks to the Gary International Black Film Festival, to be critiqued and put in touch with industry professionals like Fred the Hammer Williamson, as well as Julius Thomas. And if anybody is familiar with Hamilton, it was kind of a rage for a while.
Right. My daughters. They probably
Hamilton, and he's also one of the stars on Law and Order. But both of them critiqued my film, and big ups to you, Mr. Williamson, because he said, you know what, that's too much information. Nobody's gonna read that. So I did revamp it because of that, and I appreciate that critique. But the thing that really got to me was when Julius Thomas said to me, he said, you touched on something that the film industry hasn't really touched. And it's kind of strange that, I find it interesting, not strange, it was interesting that it was not my first subject for my film. It was actually my third. And I changed it at the last minute, but before that, even before the opportunity for me to become a filmmaker came into view, so to speak, I kept thinking, nobody's really talking about this. Why is nobody talking about this? And see, I personally got COVID twice. And I got it, the first time I came down with it was actually after I got the vaccine. And doctor told me then that a lot of people were getting it after the vaccine. But the second time I got it, and actually that first time was absolutely horrible. And only thing I could do was get up, take medicine, go to the bathroom, and go back to sleep.
Wow.
The first week was like blur. So my sons were looking over, watching over me. The second time I got it, it wasn't so bad though. But there's another thing that a lot of people still don't realize, that long COVID is actually a real thing. COVID. And actually, because I got it the second time, I have long COVID. Does that mean that I'm contagious and that I'm going to give it to everybody? No, it does not. It means basically that you have lasting symptoms of it. And I do appreciate two friends of mine who had really bad case of it, and both of them were in the hospital, and they dealt with it for at least a month. They both said to me, do your lung exercises. And that was very instrumental. And that was one of the things that a lot of people didn't realize, is because certain people who were at risk, especially the elderly and people who already had other conditions, them not being able to breathe on their own was one of the reasons why they passed away. And I was told this by a medical professional, someone who was one of the administrators. She said, we didn't know, once we took them off the respirator, that was the reason why they was dying. It was because their lungs couldn't function on their own, basically. So that's one thing. Now that isn't the whole story, so don't say that's the whole thing, because that's not what I'm telling people. But the reason why I decided to do this film is because I was noticing something that was not being mentioned. And basically the subject of my film is, her name is Ruth Needleman. She's 79 years old. Well, at least she was 79 at the time the film was done. She's a retired teacher and author, and she lives by herself. So for someone who wasn't exactly extremely sociable in the first place. I mean, she would go out and do things. She took part in things. She was even an advocate for other, for organizations as well as for other members of society. But when it came to COVID, even though she didn't get it, she still suffered from it. And that's my whole point, that even though you didn't get it, you still suffered from it. And for her, she talks about how it put her in this place during her childhood, and you'll hear that during the film. And she even became emotional during the film. But the biggest thing that I found during my research was that because when COVID really hit, and I would say especially at the height of it, anxiety and depression increased globally by 25%. And it was such an issue that the World Health Organization,
which
had
we're no longer a part of, right?
Well, WHO is, that's a good question.
We're not. I think
he wanted to withdraw from it.
Which I don't even understand, really.
Right.
But because WHO was actually stepped in along with their member states and implemented things to help deal with this crisis, because this wasn't just a United States issue. This was a global issue. So WHO actually stepped in, and they implemented, they came up with multiple formats and multiple languages, especially for the 6 to 11-year-olds, which was, they came up with 142 different languages and 62 different formats. So they were toolkits to deal with COVID. But they also had them for adults too. And for the adults, they have 16 different languages. But it was basically implementing tools to help people deal with this, because, you had even young people. I had a discussion with a group of young people about how COVID affected them. And it was interesting that they all had different stories. But there was this one young lady who in particular, she said she was a very good student. She was like an A/B student. But when COVID hit, because they had to start doing homeschooling, she started to get depressed, and she felt like, what's the point in me going to school? So her grades started dropping, and she said it actually took her, she's a high school student, and she said it actually took her 3 years to come back from this. And then you got people who, again, didn't get it, but they lost a lot of family, they lost a lot of friends, they lost a lot of loved ones. So there were different aspects of it.
Okay.
that were not really being talked about. We know the businesses were closing. We know people lost their jobs. And if you think about it, business-wise, we're still being affected by COVID because so many people haven't gone back to work.
Right.
Now the
and
question
a new
is,
form of socializing,
Right.
and working from home, and yes.
yeah,
Right.
and social formats have really taken a boom.
Yeah.
Even for artists, some people were fortunate enough to find a way to continue their artistry, even online, but some artists weren't fortunate enough
Right.
to do that, and they're still trying to pick it up, and you really learned the meaning of starving artists,
Right.
unfortunately.
So your film, the woman that you chose for the interview, why her? What made you want to pick her before we?
She just seemed like the perfect subject. I mean, there were other people that I spoke to, but because at the time I had parameters put on me, so it had to be a really short film. So she became my main subject, and I think she really exposed what a lot of people were going through during COVID because they were so isolated. And you got your elderly, you got there was just families, period, who couldn't see each other. And then if you did have a family member who had COVID, or even if there was something else that they had, if they were in the hospital, you couldn't see your loved one.
Right.
If they were on their deathbed, you still couldn't see them. And that was very heartbreaking for a lot of people. And I spoke to someone recently, her and her husband both got sick from actually mold in their house, but then they ended up with COVID while they was in the hospital, but they end up in 2 different hospitals.
Oh, wow.
And it was very emotional for them. It was very stressful and very emotional being in 2 different hospitals, and especially because even though they're up in age, they were used to taking care of each other. They've been together, I think, probably more than 50 years, I'm pretty sure. They have children and everything, but it was, also the thing about, she even told me that, there was a situation with people being in nursing homes, and there were people who actually died being in the nursing homes. And it was, you know what, I don't want to speak on it, on that aspect of it, because, that it could be truth, and I'm not saying it's not.
Right.
But it's also, it could also, I've definitely heard some, some very heartbreaking stories about that, and, some people could say it's hearsay, so I'm not going to speak on that.
Right.
But
at this time, I want to leave out with your film so they can see this interview with, what was her name again?
Her name is Ruth Needleman, and the film is called Tears of a Nation, The COVID Effect.
And it was filmed back in 2020, right?
2024.
2024. Okay,
Yes.
so just last year, but
Yes.
it dealt with a 2020 problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because it's still very relevant.
Right,
today.
definitely, and even now, unfortunately. So hopefully we have some resolution and people get the support that they need.
Definitely.
Enjoyed the film.
Well, not that I was ever a bubbly social intermixer. That was never me. But, put me up in front of 2,000 people and I will perform. Put me up in front of 20 people and I will be an educator. But this took away everything I cared about and everything I loved doing. And so it threw me back into my past. And I have a really horrible childhood past. And so it led me to a point where I was constantly beating up on myself and feeling like I must have deserved the treatment I got. And
Okay. So during your time of isolation, people typically go through depression or other things. Some people get stir crazy. What type of things did you experience when you were feeling isolated?
depression was sitting and doing nothing and hating my life and feeling useless. And so it was an implosion more than any kind of explosion. And I didn't think I could get through it. And fortunately, there were some people I could talk to. There was an occasional game of Scrabble that would reignite my spirit.
Okay.
But I'm still feeling that isolation and still trying to figure out how to become more part of something bigger than myself.
I guess, Dr. Miller, you as well, you being on the medical side, how did you see COVID during that time from
What we noticed was, in terms of mental health, I would probably say there was generalized depression because, it was an entirely different lifestyle that we were forced to be in, and then there was no control over it. And so what I saw a lot of times, particularly as you were alluding to about the families, and families would be in the hospital, they got smart enough to start putting on FaceTime so you could talk to the family members. But also the healthcare decisions were being made without family input. And the information that was being generated from the hospital typically was not necessarily always real time.
Right.
So there were people that were being buried weeks after they had passed away.
Wow.
And I had personal experience with my mom, who was in Dayton, and I could not. The only way that I got any type of input into her care was I had to literally threaten them.
Wow. Was she in a nursing home?
She was 90-something years old, and believe it or not, they were starting to ration care. And they actually were changing protocols. Actually, the New England Journal had a protocol for treatment. That's why when Trump became ill, remember how they kept asking, was he on oxygen? Remember that became a guiding question? Well, that was because that drove whether or not you were given steroids. And steroids thereby necessitated you being hospitalized. So those two things went together. So if you did not, if you became hypoxic, they would judge whether or not you were treated or how aggressively you were treated based on your oxygen level. And that was very telling in terms of how my mother was treated, because they stopped taking her oxygen level because of the older woman. They therefore didn't treat her, and you have to be treated within 72 hours, because after that you would get dementia.
Did she pass?
It tended to accelerate dementia.
Did she pass due to the COVID?
Yeah, she did.
Oh,
I just think that the way that it was handled became a diversity issue. I know that that's true, and I probably would not have said it had I not worked in two different settings.
Right.
I worked in a setting with one demographic and a setting with another, and I saw things handled completely differently. And that was very telling for me in terms of how I had interpreted healthcare delivery system in this country. And so over the time, what I found, I got depressed too, because I realized that, and the only way that I got my mother treated was I challenged the protocol, because as God would have it, I had two patients in the ICU that were mine, they were my patients, and I knew the protocol backwards and forwards.
Right.
So when I told them that the protocol dictated that my mother get steroids, it was after 72 hours, and she had COPD anyway, so accelerated her disease and she died.
Oh, wow.
So, and as you look back on it, you say, how did they make those decisions? Well, those decisions were made without our input.
Right.
So
advocacy for our loved ones, for those who are at home suffering in silence, or even just being separated from those loved ones, especially the elder. Right.
And they would send people home if you went to the emergency room. I had one patient that is now, I hate to say it, but she worked for me. And I mean, probably should say that, somebody may know who she is, but she had COVID, and because she had not had the vaccine, they refused to treat her. People that hadn't had the vaccine, they sent them home, and they told them so.
That really didn't make any sense.
Well, the point is they felt that it was a form of, it was punitive. And it was also personalized, so whoever decided to do that could do it. Well, you didn't have the vaccine, well, shame on you. And they put it in a. I mean, I saw this. I would not exaggerate, because that would just be so cruel for me to make this up.
Right.
I saw these things that they were indecent being done to people by virtue of the fact that people felt they had the power to do them.
I believe that.
And they did not follow the protocol. The New England Journal had a very specific protocol. It was oxygen driven, whether somebody were hypoxemia driven, and was also driven by steroids. And they were running out of these medications, so they started to ration.
Yeah, a lot of people did not receive these steroids.
And what we also, that's right, they didn't. And what we also found out, and what we finally found out as time went on, that there was one, what was now considered a hormone, vitamin D. They looked at a group of demographics, black people, white people, green people, yellow people, poor people, rich people, fat people, skinny people. And they found without exception that everyone had vitamin D deficiency. And they wanted to say, well, it's because you had asthma, because you were old, or because you didn't do what you had hypertension, because you were green. It was vitamin D deficiency was the driving factor, which
that relates to depression as well.
Leads to depression. That's right, exactly. Weakness. But that vitamin D deficiency, it's now considered, vitamin D is considered a hormone, and vitamin D deficiency led in many respects to people passing away, increased their mortality.
Well,
Across the board.
I've heard that especially for women, because when they hit a certain age, that their vitamin D level drops, and because I was one of those women that my vitamin D level had dropped so low that I had to take 50,000 units a week.
That's right.
But it was a friend of mine, Jackie, who told me, she said, a lot of people don't know this, but a vitamin D deficiency can also kill you too.
Can also kill you.
Yeah.
I had a lady with a vitamin D deficiency that was negligible. That is, was less than 9 or something. They said less than, which was the lowest.
Right.
And she was in a wheelchair in my office and couldn't get up.
Wow.
And so I developed a real reverence for vitamin D.
Right, and that is interesting.
D3.
And interesting you all said that. I just recently advocated for myself with going through all these medical tests and issues. I also experienced grief earlier this year, but I started reading about vitamin D, and I'm asking my doctor. She said, well, they don't really recommend that, and it's under insurance. You got to say, well, you know my body, you see my blood work, what could I do? Because I don't want to just, go to the drugstore, get vitamins and just take them, because that's not good for you either. So tell me exactly how much I need and what and when. So I got on the magnesium, I got on the vitamin D3, and just like you, better. But I had to advocate for myself. And unfortunately, a lot of people, particularly black, strong women who know themselves, got to speak up. And Wish TV also just did an interview about they're the third highest state for black women mortality in childbirth. And a lot of it is about lack of education, advocacy, and support from the doula that worked for these women. So we got to be able to just have these conversations here, know that COVID is coming up and needs support, and we'll hear that from your film, and love to actually hear the outcome of that film and what came after that. And, like you said, education, being an advocate for your parents, being an advocate for ourselves.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because a friend brought his blood test over to me yesterday. I mean, it's coincidental, it's the truth. And his vitamin D lower limits of normal is 30, and his was 32. And so I know that he has insulin resistance. And so he said, and I'm just a friend. I'm not, he said that he was told he didn't replace it. Well, we have to understand about vitamin D and hormones in particular is that they're optimum levels. In other words, it's analogous to aspirin. Okay, I could take one baby aspirin and prevent, or at least decrease the incidence of stroke. But it may take 6 325 milligram aspirin to treat arthritis. So it's the same thing with vitamins. I had a lady one time that took so much vitamin E that she had a cranial bleed.
Because she thought that's what she needed.
So you're right. You have to know how much to take.
Seek a professional.
To control his insulin resistance, he needs between 40 and 60. But they don't teach you that in medical school.
They don't.
Now, I can honestly say they don't teach. So you have to ask yourself, why? Why are we not taught that? Because there is no profit in wellness.
You know,
I'm about to say we can end up with you with your.
I've heard that so many times that there is no profit in wellness,
Not really.
and you know, and it's like you said, you definitely have to be an advocate for yourself and for your loved ones, and we really have to look out for the ones who are isolated and up in age, because they can't always advocate for themselves, and somebody has to stand up and advocate for them. And as you mentioned, Dr. Miller, decisions were being made without the family's input, and it should never be like that.
Right.
You know, so most definitely, this is something we need to pay attention to. You know, because as with Ruth, you know, she not only talked about her isolation, but where it put her mentally. Even though she never got COVID, and it was the not knowing what to expect, not knowing what to do. So there was a lot of fear mongering also.
Right.
You know, so it's but. And people have asked me if I plan to extend the film. I'm thinking that I will, you know, to include some more people, as well as different views about what, you know, things that took place. But I am also working on a second film, and this is a documentary about music. So,
do you have a web page or site or something?
Not currently. That's actually in the process, but people can look me up on Facebook under Terra Poetry in Motion. They can also check me out on Instagram, or they can send me an email at TerraCooks, the number 41 @gmail.com.
Okay. And Dr. Miller, how can we reach you?
Oh, okay. My number is, how about my email?
Okay.
DMMD. D is in David, M is in Miller, M is in Miller, D is in David, 111 @yahoo.com.
Very good. And this definitely been a good topic. We got to be mindful. COVID is back on the rise here in the States and around the world. Get educated, advocate for yourself. Fortunately, Ricky Clark and Mike Murray will be back on our next show. So I'm definitely, I know. I'm happy for them, but you didn't let me get the second part out. I'm glad that you were able to support me through this. I just appreciate it. All the knowledge. I feel very well versed in COVID. And just be sure, you know, audience, to look out, be safe, wear a mask, ask your doctors, advocate for yourself and your loved ones. Be sure to watch Diversity Focus Today with Ricky Clark on Wish TV, the Indiana podcast. We also air on Sundays at 2:00, so you see there's two lovely women there as well. And you can also reach us at Diversity Focus Today on Facebook, and as well as a new YouTube channel. So if you subscribe, which I've learned, you don't have to pay anything, just push the button. People are like, I don't subscribe anything. No, just push the button, and you will be automatically linked to our shows and even know when new ones come out.
And don't forget the like.
And don't forget the like. So
yes, and you can also find me on YouTube
there
as well.
We go.
Because I do have some music out on YouTube.
Very good.
Impressed.
I appreciate that.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you for being
Thank you for
here.
allowing us to come.
It's quite fun. Good topics. See you, Ricky. See you soon, Mike. Bye-bye.